In 2025, the fastest growing startups are hitting $1 million in revenue in under a year, but only if they follow these new rules that I'm about to share. For my current startup, EZA, I built dozens of projects. Some crashed hard, some took off, and today our companies help startups launch and get valued at over $3 billion. I've seen what works, and more importantly, I've also seen what doesn't. Most of the startup advice out there is garbage. It's outdated, the books people are still reading, the videos they're watching, even the advice from legendary founders. It's all based on a world that doesn't exist anymore. In 2025, the entire landscape of startups has changed. We have AI, we have Web3, the world's best entrepreneurs even starting their own channels and going on podcasts. These things are all breaking down the barriers to entry and to success. A solo founder from a small town in the middle of nowhere can literally launch something that rivals JP Morgan straight from a laptop because of AI and because of Web3. We're about to see something that no one has ever seen before. Even Sam Altman, the founder and CEO of OpenAI, has publicly bet on this happening. And looking at what's possible now, he's probably right. But only the founders who know how to play by the new rules are seeing that kind of traction. And that's what I'm going to give you. I've called it the pilot framework, P-I-L-O-T. It's what we've seen work again and again from our own companies to the startups that we've incubated through EZA. It's not just about tactics, it's about how to think like a 2025 founder. And it starts with the most overlooked part of building, actually understanding the problem. Here's the mistake I see happen all the time. Founders lock themselves in a room, they stare at a whiteboard, and they try to think up $1 billion idea. They've read somewhere that the first step is to find a problem, and so they brainstorm, they philosophize, they write post-it notes with words like disruption, platform. Look, I've been there. I've done that exact same thing, but here's what I've learned after building EZA and watching dozens of startups crash or take off. You can't define a real problem on your own, at least not one that people will actually pay you to solve. Let me give you an example. At one stage in EZA, loads of people that we spoke to said that our users needed more detailed explanations, they needed more granular breakdowns, more code, but deep down, we didn't believe that. But because everyone said that, we thought that that was the pain point. So we built around it. We pushed more in-depth content, we added more resources, but when we finally got that into users' hands, they didn't go more in-depth. They actually hated that new content and style. Why? Because the problem we were solving wasn't their problem. It turns out that most users didn't want a deeper breakdown. They didn't need more content. What they needed was inspiration. They needed something to make them care, to help them believe that they could actually learn this stuff. And that changed everything. It was a complete shift in how we thought about product because it wasn't about what made sense to us. It was about what lit a fire in them. And that insight, it didn't come from a whiteboard. It came from conversations, from feedback, from putting something imperfect in front of real people. And that is the first rule of building in 2025. You don't create problems through theory, you uncover them. And the only way to do that is by talking to users, and fast. It's like Nike. They don't sell foam specs, they don't talk about the fact that this shoe is built with this sort of nylon fabric. That's not the hook. That's not what gets you interested in the first place. What they sell is speed, grit. They still feel it. Nobody cares about how your product works under the hood until they believe it solves a problem that they feel. And you don't get there by guessing. You get there by shipping, listening, and being willing to be wrong. So ask yourself these questions. Are you solving a real problem that people actually feel? And how many users have you talked to this week? Or are you still guessing? So once you've stopped guessing and started listening, what's next? It's simple. You build. Fast, scrappy, relentless. Let's talk about why implementation speed might be the most underrated startup advantage of the decade. Let me just say something that most people won't. Strategy is cheap. You can spend weeks on slide decks, customer personas, long-range roadmaps, a 5-year, 10-year business plan, and you're still going to get smoked by someone who literally just launched and built their startup in 48 hours. We've seen this over and over again at EZA. Teams show up to our hackathons with nothing apart from an idea, and in literally just 2 days, they're pitching fully working products. UI, backend, demo, they've even got a website. Not months, not weeks, 2 days. We've had tons of teams who built a pitch deck, coded the prototype, and literally got real users and shipped the beta all in a weekend. That's the pace that the best founders are operating at now. It's the same thing for our internal team at EZA. We've had times where we've built entire parts of the product in literally just 48 hours, just by clearing out the noise and focusing on what we actually want to do. People constantly overestimate the amount of time that they need, and they underestimate how much they can build under pressure. So here's the rule. Build fast, validate faster. Because speed isn't just a competitive advantage, it's survival. It's the life or death of your company. It's because every day that you're not in the market is a day that you're just taking guesses, and the truth is that you can get way further, way faster by just building and shipping rather than thinking. And this only works if you stop trying to make it perfect from day one. Launch the rough version, get it in front of users, and then refine. So ask yourself these questions. If you only had 48 hours to show your progress, what would you ship? What is one task that you've been overthinking and you could launch rough? So you're building fast, great. But here's another thing that most people miss. Speed doesn't just come from hustle, it comes from leverage. The fastest founders are often working harder, but they aren't just working harder. They're tapping into things that they already have. People, networks, trust, credibility, and they're using it to accelerate everything as leverage for the work that they're doing. Most founders already have what they need to move faster. They're just too scared to use it. Connections, communities, an audience, even just the people who trust them enough to open their email. But instead of reaching out, they tell themselves, maybe it's not the right time, or I don't want to bother anyone, and they end up building in silence, alone, slow. I've seen this happen firsthand, even with people that we've hired. We literally once hired a head of growth who refused to post on LinkedIn. He wouldn't ask his friends to share what we were building, and he didn't want to impose on his friends. But you know what's even worse than asking? Staying invisible. I'll never forget the time when I sent that email to Lord Smith, the master of my college at Cambridge. Honestly, I did hesitate. There was kind of this voice in my head that was saying, who do you think you are? Why would he care? And that one message kicked off a chain of intros that opened tons of doors for us and ultimately culminated into EZA growing into what it is today and me winning the Cambridge Alumni Award. Another time we reached out to our old school headmaster. We just said, hey, here's what we're building. Can we run a pilot at the school? He said yes, and that snowballed into real traction. Not because we had a massive team or anything, not because we had perfect timing, but because we leveraged the relationships that we already have. Leverage isn't about having the biggest network in the world. It's about using the one that you've already got. Don't wait until you've built the perfect pitch deck or hit some imaginary milestone. Use your alma mater, your old university, your old school, your old boss, the person who follows you on LinkedIn but has never liked one of your posts. Every intro, every DM, every signal boost, it all adds up. So ask yourself these questions. Who in your network could help, but you've been too afraid to ask? What warm intro, old friend, or follower could you activate right now? And here's the thing, if you're willing to ask for help, even if it means getting ignored, if you're willing to reach out, if you're willing to risk rejection and look a little bit silly just to move an idea forward, that's not just resourcefulness, that's obsession. Because you know what's special about people who are really obsessed with solving a problem? They'll do whatever it takes. They won't wait, they won't apologize, they'll pick up the phone, send the email, knock on doors, and that brings us to the next rule. In 2025, if you're not fully in, you're already out. You need to obsess over what you're building. Honestly, I see it so much. Founders who are half in, half out, they say that they're building a startup, but they're still going out every weekend, partying, still sort of clinging on to their main job. They're waiting for validation before they go all in. That's not how this game works. The founders who actually make it, they're obsessed. I'm talking about the ones who eat, sleep, and breathe their product. They know what their users are saying at 2 a.m. on Discord. They know the reviews. They're shipping updates while everyone else is still scheduling the next meeting. Like, oh, maybe we can meet next week or the week after. It's not some toxic hustle culture thing. It's just that when you're obsessed, you care. And it keeps you up at night. That's also what we saw with Walden, who founded Cognition. This guy didn't just want to build a cool AI tool. He wanted to build out a whole category. He was relentless. And he still is. That mindset, that obsession, that's why his company is now worth over $2 billion. Founders who are just interested give up when things break. Founders who are obsessed fix it and they ship it the next day. So maybe I'll just clarify that for a second. You don't need more structure necessarily, you need more obsession. At the early stage, you're not building systems and you're not optimizing processes. You have no processes to optimize. What are you even doing? And if you aren't all in on that journey, you won't last. The only thing that gets you through the chaos, the pivots, the rejections, the rebuilds is obsession. So if you're looking for some questions to ask yourself about this bit, what part of the product do you think about in the shower? Would you say that your team are just interested, or would you say that you're actually obsessed? And once you've got that, once you're shipping fast and chasing feedback like your life depends on it, there's only one thing left to do. You know what kills more startups than bad ideas? Guessing. When you're just first starting out, there's this massive temptation to spend weeks, sometimes even months, tweaking and building features that nobody ever asked for. You're refining things, even scrapping things that people have never even seen. You're waiting until it's ready. Meanwhile, someone else ships the scrappy version, gets feedback, and beats you to market. And that's why iteration and moving fast isn't optional, it's literally everything. At EZA, we've seen this play out so many times. There were weeks when we pushed multiple app updates in a single day, not because we were rushing, but because we were listening. We get feedback from this user, he says, this is not working, we fix it. And it's like a no-brainer. It's like, why didn't we even think of that in the first place? And we ship it. And you know what happens when you do this over and over again? We've grown faster than anyone else in our space because most startups ship an update like every 2 weeks, maybe even every month. We've been on a cadence that nobody else can match because we move. The same way you build your muscle. You stress them, you break them, and you rebuild back stronger. And you also don't need perfect data to iterate. Sometimes it's literally just a DM from a user, a little bit of a drop in engagement that you kind of feel, or a random insight from a tweet. Mark Zuckerberg said it really well back in Facebook's early days: move fast and break things. And people sort of mocked that, but it worked because it created speed and it also allowed them to get more feedback, and feedback drove more progress. The flywheel just blew off. So here's the final rule. Don't guess, test, then test again, iterate, because the answers aren't up in here, they're in your users. If you're not shipping fast and learning in real time, then you're building blind. So if you want a couple of questions to ask yourself to see whether you're on the right track here: what's the last thing that you shipped? What did you learn from it? What's one assumption that you're making that you've never actually tested? So you've now got the framework. Pilot, the same system that I'd use if I had to launch again tomorrow. This is what we've seen work again and again for founders building billion-dollar companies from scratch. But none of that matters if you don't move. So here's my challenge to you. Pick one action from today. Just one. It might be sending that cold email, validating a real pain point, obsessing over a single user problem, or just shipping a rough version to test. Just do it. Do it within the next 24 hours. And once you've taken that next step, I'll see you in the next video.